Welcome to Hoops Wednesday here on the Baseball Card Illustrated channel. This is the one day a week that Kevin, the Diamond King, and the Free Throw Line King, and I, Bronco, the PSA 11, take a break from baseball and focus on
hoops.
Hoops! Some round ball, some basketball, whatever you want to call it. Anyway, this week we came up with a 4-point play of autographs as 4 heroes from the hardwood answered our mail and returned a 1990-91 NBA Hoops card to us with an autograph.
Well, that's why I say it's hoops, because literally the cards are from the hoops set. And again, one of the classic designs of its time with the sort of silverish gray border and that little archway for the for the picture of the in this case the coach, but also the player. This is one of the more simple but classic designs of its time.
I suppose this is the point where we have to say we lied because there's also a Fleer card in here.
Well, there's one.
That's okay.
Yeah. It snuck its way in. Fleer wanted to hang out with hoops. I get it.
Anyway, we're trying to put together as much of the NBA Hoops set from this year autographed as possible, and we're doing pretty well. We're up to like 30-some guys now as we're going through this series. Wow. So we've had a lot of fun talking about them. And here's a former coach of the Bucks, a number of different teams throughout his career.
Del Harris is in his 80s now. As of this taping here, he's 83 years old, and his current job, he is the vice president of the Texas Legends. That is a G League team for the Dallas Mavericks, the Texas Legends. But he was a coach for obviously the Bucks, as you see here, the Rockets and the Lakers as well.
I'm going to say he also included a nice note here to me that said, "Thanks for the kind words. And way to go working with kids," because I do some youth basketball coaching.
Oh, you told him about that?
Yeah.
And you wrote to him and mentioned it. Hey, I think that might be one of the coolest parts of this, is where you can connect on something that you're doing in your own life, where you can share a little bit of your story and they can give you some encouragement. Nothing wrong with that.
Well, I was going to say, and one of the things in the letter is usually something along the lines of, one of the reasons I'm trying to put together a number of these cards is to show them off to kids that may have heard of a couple of these players, but these are the guys that we grew up with.
Oh, absolutely.
These were the guys who were watching the highlights back when ESPN and SportsCenter had highlights instead of 24 hours of LeBron James. And we grew up with them, enjoyed watching them play, and kind of share a little bit of knowledge of the game and the history of the game.
Yeah, this is where you learn it. I mean, you learned it from these players and coaches, and in this case, Del Harris was the coach of the Bucks at a significant time. That was from 87 to 91.
Yeah, and then after he left, it got bad for a while. Anyway, here's Steve Alford, kind of a well-known name in basketball.
And
not so much for his NBA career per se, but
yeah, I was going to say, for me, what you know him for these days is as a coach. He's been the coach of Nevada. But he played his college ball in Indiana. Obviously, here he's a Maverick.
I was going to say, I don't know how well I'm going to do in trying to show these stats off here from Indiana, but he was a really, really good college basketball player.
Yeah.
And, I, especially back then, wasn't a huge fan of college basketball, so I didn't really appreciate just how good he was at Indiana, and just kind of remember him as essentially a backup guard that played a few years in the NBA, and that's a tremendous accomplishment, but I never really fully appreciated the kind of player he truly was.
And he was sort of a forerunner of that Mavericks era. It was a few years after this when the Mavericks got really young and really, really good. And so this was the Mavericks team kind of before that era. But his coaching career has been pretty incredible. He's been at it for 30 years now. Started at a school called Manchester, spent some time at Southwest Missouri State, and then came the run. 8 years at Iowa, 6 years at New Mexico, when New Mexico was getting 3 seeds in the NCAA tournament, and some time at UCLA, some very good years at UCLA, and now he's at Nevada.
So here's another guy coming up that I know he was really, really good in college and early on in his pro career, and by the time we get to this card here, was kind of forgotten, partly because he was playing in Sacramento, and partly because he just was no longer the player that he was when he first came in, and was kind of a unique player in that he was, 7 feet tall or whatever, but kind of had some of the skills that you see of a guy like a Giannis today.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see a current coach's mindset, a 2020 coach's mindset, coach a Ralph Sampson at the phase of his career where he was athletic. Because he's 60 now, so I don't think Sampson would be a great basketball player now. But the Sampson of back then would be a pretty interesting guy to have around. Like, okay, you give him to Mike Budenholzer, you give him to whoever from the modern coaches. I think you'd get something extra out of Ralph Sampson that you didn't before. Now this is a long and storied career, and as you mentioned, by this point he's been in the league a little while, and he's on team number 3. The Sacramento Kings. This is his next to last NBA team that he was with. He was with Washington, which was called the Bullets at the time. After this, but Rockets' career was the time. That's when Ralph Sampson was still famous. He still had endorsement deals when he was with the Rockets.
I was going to say they were going to the NBA or the finals, I should say, and him and Hakeem Olajuwon were quite the duo. And obviously, you know about Hakeem in that draft, and they decided to go with him instead of a young guard that might have done something in Chicago. I also need to point out that Ralph Sampson usually sends this card that's also signed, which is a photo of his college career from Sports Illustrated as part of his work for the Ralph Sampson Foundation.
Virginia, what an incredible time, for him. Of course, he's from the state of Virginia, so that was a big deal, and he was the number 1 pick overall. The Rockets coming out of Virginia in 1983. I don't know if you know this, but he was. Shoe deals in the 80s were not really a big thing, but he had one with Puma at the time that the Jordan deal was finally getting off the ground, and one of them got famous. One of those shoe deals lasted longer than the other one. How about that?
I still have my Air Samsons. And that brings us to Johnny Moore.
There he is.
Played for the San Antonio Spurs at this point in his career, and we've talked about a couple guys that. Steve Alford and Ralph Sampson, and this is about the time where David Robinson was now with the Spurs at this point and had joined them after sitting out 2 years of NBA action to fulfill his naval commitment. And Johnny Moore is a pretty decent player, but not really a big factor for the Spurs at this point, probably toward the end of the line for him.
Yeah, he went on to play, let's grab this here. Yeah, this is literally at the very end. In fact, he had 2 tours with the Spurs. He was with the Spurs from 80 to 87 with the Nets. He was out for a little while, and it was the Tulsa Fast Breakers in 1989, and then he came
And I can't
back.
tell you what a big fan I was of them.
Yeah, the old Fast Breakers. That's got to be. Is that the CBA? Yep, the CBA.
Would you believe that they were actually a half-court offense? They like to slow it down. I don't know if that's true, but
CBA. I just remember the CBA had a champion from Sioux Falls, South Dakota. That's one of their champion teams was the Sioux Falls team. Anyway, this was his second tour here with the Spurs, and a very, very brief one at the end of his career. But yeah, Johnny Moore was a guy that led the league in assists way back in 1982. Now, here's something you may not know. See the jersey number there?
00.
00. Retired by the Spurs.
For who?
For him.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Wow, I did not know that.
The Spurs have retired, and this is kind of a shock to me because the Spurs have not been around for a million years. They've retired 10 numbers in their career.
Okay, so let's see. I'm assuming Duncan's has already been retired.
Duncan's is one.
Yeah, David Robinson.
Robinson is one.
Sean Elliott.
Sean Elliott is one.
Yeah, I was going to say he would probably have to be. The Iceman. George Gervin.
No. Yes.
Oh,
yes.
I was going to say.
Sorry, no, that was so weird. Like, why would it not be? Yeah.
Now I'm going to start to draw, Tony Parker.
Yeah, give me the recent ones. Parker,
Ginobili.
Yeah. The rest of these are going to be a little weird.
I was going to say, who else do we got on the list?
Johnny Moore, Avery Johnson.
Okay, they did retire the general. Okay.
Bruce Bowen.
Sure.
Sean Elliott.
Now, you remember Sean Elliott's big claim to fame with the Spurs, right?
No.
He hit that huge 3 at the Memorial Day Miracle against Portland in the Western Conference Finals of the shortened 1999 season playoffs. So I've always loved Sean Elliott for that reason because I was a huge Spurs fan at the time.
That must have been the one thing that got him in the retirement number. But that's
and being
numbers.
on the first championship team didn't hurt. But
right. But that's funny.
You know he was also traded for Dennis Rodman?
Are you serious?
Yeah, the trade for Dennis Rodman, they gave up Sean Elliott to get him. and like 2 years later, Rodman was gone to Chicago, and Sean Elliott was back. Like, it might have even been a year later.
It was 1 year. He played 1 year with the Pistons, 93, 94, and then came back to... It's the Ricky Henderson deal. You can trade him, but he's coming back.
He's coming back.
That's,
you can change the address, the locks, everything, but he'll be back.
He will find his way back. So, yeah, Johnny Moore, this man's number has been retired by the San Antonio Spurs. Wow. Not that a lot of players wear 00, but no one else will for the Spurs.
What if Robert Parrish were to come back and play for them? Would they make an exception?
I feel like he could pay Johnny Moore a little bit, and Johnny would say, "You wear 00 all you want, sir."
So I guess we'll call this the Forgotten Legends edition of Hoops Wednesday. Like you think about all these guys, and it's people that probably right before our time of really getting interested in basketball, or in their college career, in the case of Steve Alford, were really, really good.
Yeah.
But by the time we were getting involved in watching and everything, it's like, oh, here's this guy coming off the bench, or averaging 8 points a game as a starter, or whatever it might be. Late
end guys, basically. Like this is the end of the line for a lot of these guys, especially for Johnny Moore. That's literally the end of his NBA career right there.
So thank you for joining us on this edition of Hoops Wednesday, and we hope you enjoyed the video. We encourage you to be an all-star and subscribe to the channel, along with giving this video a thumbs up, and leave a comment down below, especially if you got some great memories of watching these guys play, or maybe they played for your favorite team. That'd be great. Anyway, I'm Bronco, the PSA 11.
And I'm Kevin. I'd probably just maybe fetch some Gatorade for the guys at this point.
And you've been watching... Oh, I forgot to say who we had here.
Yeah.
So on behalf of Johnny Moore, Del Harris,
and the other Del Harris,
Steve Alford, who sent his blessings and covered up Johnny Moore, and Ralph Sampson and his shoe line. Now we'd like to thank you and say we appreciate you watching Baseball Card Illustrated channel.